Welcome to No Cover Comics. We cover the tattered and torn comics, not the new ones. I've been reading comics since I was 3 and didn't understand a word on the page. So over the years, these comics have piled up. And being an enthusiastic comic reader first and foremost, and a collector second, many of my comics have not survived unscathed. So I started this channel to share, review, and poke fun at those tattered comics. I've read everything, so I have Image, Eclipse, Harvey, Carlton, and Whitman, along with DC and Marvel, mostly from the 70s and 80s. No Cover Comics explores single issues. If a comic issue has multiple stories, the stories will be split into their own videos, like our first issue. To start off, we decided on the second issue of Giant Size Avengers from November 1974. In the back of this book is a reprint of a Stan Lee Jack Kirby Fantastic Four tale from 1963, which was put there to give us the origin of the Avengers foe at the beginning of the issue, Kang the Conqueror. So, like I've done many times reading comics, let's start with a story in the back. A story where the Fantastic Four find themselves prisoners of the Pharaoh, written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby. Our story starts with Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Girl, and the Human Torch flying in the Fantastic car looking for the Thing. Invisible Girl suggests trying Alicia Masters' apartment. The place is empty, so Human Torch does a flyover of the neighborhood. Torch finds the couple just as the Thing is getting ready to enjoy a cigar a fan had sent him. So the Torch gives the Thing a hand by lighting up the cigar, frying the cigar in the process. After the Thing calms down, Torch relays his message from Mr. Fantastic, that even though it is his day off, Thing and Alicia need to get to the Baxter building on the double. When Thing and Alicia arrive, Mr. Fantastic tells them of a visit Invisible Girl and he had at the Museum of Natural History the day before. Mr. Fantastic had been studying a period of time in ancient Egyptian history that is historically unaccounted for. At the museum, Mr. Fantastic had found it, hidden among the countless hieroglyphs, a radioactive herb that is the cure for blindness. For anyone confused at this point, now is a good time to explain the players. Fantastic Four at this point are the smartest man in the world, Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, able to stretch his body to great lengths. Reed's girlfriend, scientist Sue Storm, Invisible Girl, able to turn invisible. Sue's teenage brother, Johnny Storm, Human Torch, a flamin' hotshot. And lastly, Reed's lifelong best friend, pilot Ben Grimm, the super strong orange rock monster called the Thing. Oh, and to anyone thinking I thought her name was Invisible Woman, our story takes place in the years before Sue's name changed to Invisible Woman, and spoiler, Sue and Reed's eventual marriage. If you're wondering why the Fantastic Four care so much about a cure for blindness, besides the obvious reasons, that's because of the Thing's girlfriend, Alicia, the adopted daughter of the Puppet Master. See, the Puppet Master accidentally killed Alicia's parents and blinded her when he destroyed the lab he shared with Alicia's father. Feeling remorseful, he adopted her and vowed to cure her blindness. Side note, he never did. When Puppet Master tried to use Alicia and her sculpting skills in his plan against the FF, she rebelled, became their friend, and eventually fell in love with the Thing. Hence the Fantastic Four's excitement for a blindness cure. It's funny, 50 years later, and we now live in a world where some forms of blindness can be cured. And this comic book implies curing blindness is harder to figure out than time travel. Speaking of time travel, back to our story. The Thing's first 2 questions after hearing of a cure are, how could there be radioactive herbs in ancient Egypt? And how do we get there? Mr. Fantastic has no answer for the first. But as for the second, Reed reminds the Thing of the Fantastic Four's first encounter with Doc Doom, where Doom used a time machine to transport them to the past. And despite all that happened, it still remains in Doom's abandoned castle. In that story, Dr. Doom kidnaps Invisible Girl and forces the Fantastic Four into going back in time to get Blackbeard's magic treasure for him. See Prisoners of Doom, Fantastic Four number 5, July 1962 for the full story. Wasting no more time, the Fantastic Four head out in their vertical takeoff and landing plane, way ahead of its time, for Doom's abandoned castle. They find the throne room where the time machine is installed, still intact and operational, and the Fantastic Four heads to the ancient past, leaving Alicia behind to operate the controls and retrieve them in 24 hours. Immediately upon arrival, they're attacked by soldiers whose armor doesn't belong to the time they're in. Quickly, the Torch melts their spears, forcing them to mass attack by hand. But they're no match for the Thing, as he ties them up with their own armor. Reinforcements arrive on chariots, which Mr. Fantastic makes short work of as Invisible Girl evades capture. The battle seems won, but out of nowhere, an unseen force takes the power from each member, one by one. First, the Human Torch loses his flame, then the Thing's strength is drained. Mr. Fantastic can no longer stretch, and finally Invisible Girl is made visible as they all lose consciousness. When they awaken, it's before the Pharaoh, Rama-Tut. To their surprise, he speaks English and knows who they are. While the others wonder if they're in the wrong time, Mr. Fantastic figures out Rama-Tut's the one in the wrong time. Impressed by Mr. Fantastic, Rama shows them the weapon he used to defeat them, an ultra-diode ray invented in the year 3000. And when Mr. Fantastic deduces Rama is a time traveler also, the Pharaoh tells them his story. Living in the year 3000, he'd become bored, as his time was peaceful, with no adventure or strife. Through watching ancient films, he had seen the Fantastic Four and envied their careers. At this point in the story, it is heavily implied that Rama-Tut is a descendant of Dr. Doom, which, if you've seen him as Kang, makes a lot of sense. I've always loved how Marvel is so connected. He's visiting his amazing ancestors' ruins when he comes across a partially remaining time machine and its plans. He spends years building his new time machine, forming it into the shape of an idol, the Sphinx. He planned to take advantage of the superstitious nature of people in the bygone days. And with basing his headquarters in ancient Egypt, his advanced tech would make him a ruler of all mankind. But when Rama landed in the past, his time machine was damaged, stranding him there. The crash also injured him, blinding him. So he fired blindly at the natives with his ultra-diode ray and made them his slaves. They then got him the rare herbs he needed, which he affected with radiation from his machine, which then restored his eyesight, and Rama-Tut had ruled ever since. Using this monologuing moment as a chance, Mr. Fantastic makes a surprise attempt to seize the awesome weapon, but isn't quite fast enough, and Rama bathes them in its rays, zapping them of their will and turning them into his slaves. Having Mr. Fantastic, the Thing, and the Human Torch taken away, Rama keeps Invisible Girl at his side, declaring Sue shall be rewarded by becoming his queen. This is kind of a trend with this guy, trying to force women to be his queen. The Thing is shown to a slave galleon to pull an oar, and Mr. Fantastic is sent out to be a super lookout for the army. Rama-Tut reduces the Human Torch to playing court gesture, juggling flaming balls on his back, while Invisible Girl is prepared to marry the Pharaoh. From there we go to the Thing on the boat. And this next part caused me some confusion for quite a while. In the heat of the hotter than he is used to desert sun, the Thing changes back into regular Ben Grimm. For years I thought, why did Ben think he was stuck as the Thing? He's always changing at random times. He just needs to learn how to control it. So I felt quite vindicated years later when Reed admitted to having the same theory during Secret Wars. Finding himself Ben again, his mind was freed, and his small hands easily slipped out of the Thing-sized shackle. He quickly escapes using his 20th century fighting skills, making short work of the guards. He jumps overboard and swims for shore. Once on land, he commandeers a chariot and using it, he makes his way back to Rama-Tut's palace. Meanwhile, while Rama is enjoying Torch's tricks and creeping on Invisible Girl, Ben is able to sneak in and steal Rama's ultra-diode ray. But being inside the castle and out of the hot sun, Ben begins to transform back into the Thing and under the control of the ray again. Luckily, he uses the gun on Invisible Girl to free her from Rama's control before he loses his will. Invisible Girl quickly scoops up the weapon and scrambles to free her brother before Rama-Tut can stop her, as her wedding gown keeps her from turning completely invisible. After the Human Torch is bathed in the ray by his sister, he attacks Rama, driving him into a secret passage, which Rama uses to rush to his time machine's control room. After Rama is gone, Invisible Girl turns the ray on the Thing before Rama's guards can attack, and he pulls through them like tissue paper. Once out of the palace, Human Torch flies off with the gun in search of Mr. Fantastic. Torch finds Mr. Fantastic acting as a shield for Rama-Tut's army as they attack another army. Freeing Mr. Fantastic, they are all out for the palace, where they find Invisible Girl and the Thing interrogating one of Tut's minions, who tells them how to enter Rama's secret passage. Racing for the end of the passage, Mr. Fantastic warns to check for a booby trap, and just as Reed thought, when the Human Torch throws the gun through the opening, it is atomized. That's not going to stop the Fantastic Four, though. The Human Torch just melts a hole in the ceiling. As they go through the hole into the new room, Rama-Tut's image appears on a screen. Enraged, he vows to destroy them and releases a torrent of water into the room, intending to drown them. No problem for the powerful Fantastic Four, though, as Mr. Fantastic has the Human Torch vaporize the water at its source. And for some reason, the room isn't full of steam when he does this. I'm not sure exactly what kind of sciencey stuff that was. Safe, they head out probing the Sphinx for Rama. Mr. Fantastic in the machinery, Invisible Girl and the Thing smashing through walls, while the Human Torch flies above the maze of rooms searching. It's not long before all four find Rama's control pod, but it's too late. Rama is ready to leave and launches his pod into time, leaving the Sphinx behind to mystify mankind. As the Fantastic Four search for the optic nerve restorative, they contemplate Rama-Tut's relationship to Doc Doom. Once the cure is found, Mr. Fantastic realizes they need to get out, now. Because as soon as they get out, the inside of the Sphinx explodes in upon itself, destroying all of the Pharaoh's equipment and erasing every other trace of Rama-Tut in the past. They get to the recovery point just as the time machine's retriever is activating, bringing them all home. Elated at first, it quickly becomes disappointment as they realize the radioactive cure did not come through with them. Mr. Fantastic deduces that this is because of the radioactive nature of the cure, that this earliest version of the time machine has a design flaw. It will not transport radioactive material. Though the group is dejected, Mr. Fantastic vows that now that he knows that it can be done, he won't stop trying to recreate the cure. He doesn't. They're all happy everyone is together and safe, and our story wraps up with the Thing thanking the others for risking their lives to help Alicia. As far as one-off stories go, this one might not be the most exciting or action-packed, but it does give you a sense of how far the Fantastic Four will go for family. They'll go on a trek into the past like it's a Sunday drive. The heroics of the story visually favor Mr. Fantastic. While Thing's strength is impressive, we don't really see that strength tested. And with Torch, yes, he flies and throws fires, but he's not challenged to use his full power or even be creative, except for when he's making flaming amusements for the Pharaoh. Mr. Fantastic, on the other hand, is some of the most interesting visual panels in the comic. Shot of him acting as a shield and rolling away a few panels later is my oldest memory of Reed Richards, and a point of reference I've used to argue Reed's durability for years. If you noticed I haven't said anything about Invisible Girl, that's because this is from the years before they realized she could be way more than just an object of the bad guy's inappropriate affection and a damsel in distress who can hide well. Her single heroic act in the story being picking up a ray gun and pointing it at her brother while being chased. Overall, it's a decent little adventure that you don't need to know a lot of backstory to enjoy. Includes a formidable villain in the Marvel Universe and gives you a sense of who the Fantastic Four really are. A family seeking adventure who just happen to be superheroes. And that is the first appearance of the man who would become Kang the Conqueror. In our next video, we'll go into the story in the front of the comic to see Kang as he takes on the mighty Avengers in A Blast from the Past. Spoiler, an Avenger dies, like really dies and never comes back.